The Mont d'Arts in Brussels, one of the most fascinating places in the Belgian capital, where history, culture, and art merge in a unique space. This hill is situated between the lower town, once home to commerce and common folk, and the upper town, where the palaces of the nobility were located. From Brussels Central Station, we head towards Albertina Square and find ourselves at the foot of this majestic hill. We are struck by the splendor, grandeur, and harmony of the view that unfolds on the Mont d'Arts. Monumental buildings, sculptures, the green terraces of the landscaped park, flower beds, and fountains are arranged in geometrically precise proportions, creating a harmonious impression that captivates with its vastness and magnificence.
The memorial at Albertina Square is dedicated to King Albert I and Queen Elizabeth. This ensemble highlights their significance in Belgian history and their contribution to the country's cultural heritage. The equestrian statue of Albert I, the third king of the Belgians, stands at the foot of the Mont d'Arts, just a few dozen meters from the Royal Library of Belgium. The bronze equestrian statue, created by sculptor Alfred Courtens, was unveiled in 1951. Albert I is depicted as the soldier king, wearing a military cloak and holding a helmet in his hand. King Albert I of Belgium became famous for his resolute and heroic role during World War I and the post-war reconstruction of the country. He became a symbol of Belgian resistance against German aggression. When Germany invaded neutral Belgium in 1914, Albert refused to comply with Germany's demands to allow their troops to pass through the country. He personally took command of the Belgian army and led the defense, holding the front despite the overwhelming superiority of German forces. After the war, Albert was recognized as one of Europe's leading monarchs. His courage and dedication to defending his country earned him international respect. During his reign, a significant electoral reform was introduced in 1919, expanding suffrage and marking a step toward the democratization of the nation, known as the King Climber. Albert spent much of his time in the mountains. Tragically, he died in 1934 during a climbing expedition near Marc-les-Dames, falling from a cliff at the age of 58.
The statue of Queen Elizabeth of Bavaria, created by René Claquette in 1980, depicts Queen Elizabeth I, also known as Elizabeth of Bavaria. Elizabeth was married to Prince Albert, who later became King of the Belgians, reigning from 1909 to 1934. The statue of Elizabeth faces the equestrian statue of her husband, Albert I, located across the street. During World War I, Queen Elizabeth visited the front lines and supported a care facility for the sick. Her dedication earned her the affection of many people, both in Belgium and across Europe. In her later years, she became a significant patron of the arts. In 1937, she founded an international music competition that provided young virtuosos an opportunity to showcase their talent. This competition, known today as the Queen Elizabeth Competition, continues to take place every 3 years. Queen Elizabeth, the consort of King Albert I, was renowned for her support of the arts and sciences. Among her circle of friends was none other than Albert Einstein.
The Mont d'Arts was created in the early 20th century on the initiative of King Leopold II, who envisioned transforming this area into a cultural hub for Brussels. Originally, the district consisted of medieval streets, which were demolished to make way for this impressive architectural ensemble. The hill received its current appearance in 1958, when it was redesigned for the World Expo, blending classical architecture with green spaces. The garden design was crafted by landscape architect René Pacher. A staircase adorned with flower beds and fountains leads to the top of the hill. From the upper level, visitors are treated to one of the most picturesque views of Brussels. On clear days, the Town Hall Tower on the Grand Place, the Basilica of the Sacred Heart, and the atomium are visible. Despite its central location, the park offers a serene atmosphere, inviting contemplation and relaxation. The Mont des Arts is one of the most popular recreational areas for city residents.
The Mont des Arts is an urban complex and historic site that houses several important institutions, including the Royal Library of Belgium and the Brussels Conference Centre. A hallmark of mid-20th century architecture, the complex features the massive geometric forms of postmodernism, evident in the architecture of the Royal Library of Belgium and the Congress Palace. The Royal Library of Belgium is a central cultural institution with a centuries-old history. The origins of its collection date back to the 15th century, when the Dukes of Burgundy began amassing manuscripts. In 1837, the Royal Library of Belgium was officially established by a government decree. Its current location in the Mont des Arts district places it in close proximity to numerous other important cultural institutions in Brussels. The library serves as a depository for every book published in Belgium as well as works by Belgian authors published abroad. Additionally, it holds a collection of over 200,000 maps, atlases, and globes. Among its holdings are ancient books dating back to the 15th century and 35,000 manuscripts.
The Brussels Conference Centre is a venue for conferences, fairs, meetings, and other events, spanning an area of 13,000 square meters. With its impressive architecture that blends old and modern elements, as well as an inviting bar with a terrace overlooking Albertina Park, it serves as an ideal starting point for exploring the many nearby museums. Artworks adorn the foyer of the conference center. Many original features, including large frescoes by Paul Delvaux, René Magritte, and Louis van Lint, harmonize beautifully with the modern design.
The clock with the Carillon is located on the facade of the Palace of the Dynasties at the Mont des Arts. Its creator, architect Jules Gobert, is regarded as one of the most prominent monumentalists in Belgian architecture. The clock is designed in the shape of a 12-pointed star. Surrounding the clock face are 12 niches containing figures that symbolize significant personalities from Belgian history, including a duke and a farmer. A favorite among tourists is the figure beneath the number 6, the Flemish painter Peter Paul Rubens. Each hour, the hands point to one of the figures, and a melody begins to play. The music is produced by 24 bells, specially crafted at the Packard Bell Foundry. A carillon is a musical instrument consisting of bells tuned to different frequencies, each producing a unique sound. This carillon comprises 24 bells. The carillon alternates between fragments of two folk melodies, a Walloon song, Where Could We Be Better by André Gretry, and the Flemish carillon song by Peter Benoit. Each melody is repeated every 2 hours. Above the carillon stands a Jacquemart, a sculpture of a citizen in a top hat, styled after 1830 fashion, created by Henri Albada, striking the hours. On special occasions, the carillon plays La Brabançon by François van Campenhout, the Belgian national anthem.
As we ascend the Mont des Arts towards the museums, we come across a small square featuring the sculpture Revolving Ear. This monumental steel sculpture was created by 20th century American sculptor Alexander Calder. It rotates slowly around its axis, completing 1 revolution per minute, as if listening to the sounds of the city. The Revolving Ear integrates seamlessly into its surroundings, though it was originally commissioned by the US government for an entirely different location. In 1958, it was displayed in a pool in front of the United States Pavilion at the World Expo in Brussels. After the event, the sculpture was gifted to Belgium and stored for many years in the depot of the Royal Museums. In 2000, the sculpture found its current home and became a striking feature of the Mont des Arts.
One of the charming buildings you can see on Rue Ravenstein is the former Clef-Ravenstein mansion. Built in the late 15th and early 16th centuries, it was constructed using brick and sandstone in the vibrant Gothic style. The facade, in particular, is richly decorated, giving it a majestic and highly impressive appearance. Originally built as a townhouse around 500 years ago, the building now houses a restaurant and office spaces.
The Palace of Charles of Lorraine is a neoclassical palace located on Museum Square at the summit of the Coudenberg, near the Place Royale. Construction began in 1757, and it was the former residence of the governor of the Habsburg Netherlands, Prince Charles Alexander of Lorraine, who was married to the sister of Maria Theresa of Austria. Charles Alexander served as Governor-General of the Austrian Netherlands from 1744 to 1780. As one of the leading commanders of the Austrian armed forces, he played a significant role in the War of the Austrian Succession. During his tenure as governor, he gained a reputation as a wise and benevolent ruler, promoting Enlightenment progress and the economic development of Brussels in the 18th century. His equestrian statue, which we have already seen on the Grand Place, adorns the roof of the House of the Tanners and Brewers Guild, known as the Golden Tree. The Palace of Charles of Lorraine is one of the most fascinating buildings in Brussels. Today, it serves as a museum showcasing 18th century artifacts that illustrate the aristocratic and intellectual life of the period. The exhibits include porcelain, silverware, clocks, scientific instruments, and medals. A statue of Charles Alexander of Lorraine, created by sculptor Louis Jahat in 1848, stands at the center of Museum Square. It was part of a series of sculptures dedicated to prominent figures in Belgian history. Currently, the statue is positioned slightly off to the side in a corner of the square, appearing somewhat neglected and without a plaque identifying the subject. This may be a temporary arrangement as part of ongoing restoration efforts.
The Musical Instruments Museum in Brussels is one of the largest of its kind in the world. It houses a collection of over 8,000 academic, traditional, and folk instruments, with more than 1,200 displayed in the museum galleries. Founded in 1877, the museum has been located since 2000 in the former luxury department store Old England, a stunning Art Nouveau building designed in 1899 by architect Paul Saint-Honoy. Made of steel and glass, the building is extraordinarily impressive and is considered one of the finest examples of Art Nouveau in Belgium. The museum was established in 1877 as part of the Royal Conservatory, with the aim of introducing students to historical instruments. Even at its inception, the museum boasted a remarkable collection drawn from two private sources. The first collection belonged to François-Joseph Fétis, a renowned musicologist and the first director of the Royal Conservatory. After his death, the Belgian state purchased his collection. The second exceptional collection comprised about 100 Indian instruments, gifted to Belgian King Leopold II by Raja Surendra Mohan Tagore. The museum's collection was significantly expanded under its first curator, Victor Charles Mahilin. Mahilin played a pivotal role in the museum's history, elevating it to international status by actively acquiring new instruments. By the time of his death in 1924, the museum's collection had grown to 400 instruments, including nearly 3,200 original pieces.
The unique set of Chinese giant bells, known as bianqing, showcases the rich musical culture of ancient China. These bells were used in imperial ceremonies and are a rare example of ancient percussion instruments. The bianqing consists of 16 stones of varying thicknesses, suspended from a portico. The musician strikes the stones, made of lacquered limestone in this case, with a hammer, producing 16 clear tones. The presence of lithophones in China has been documented as early as the late 3rd millennium BC. The bianqing was played in imperial ensembles and Confucian temples, where its philosophical teachings were closely tied to governance. The golden dragons painted on the stones symbolized the emperor. This instrument was first exhibited at the 1905 World Expo in Liège before being added to the collection of the Musical Instruments Museum.
The museum boasts an impressive collection of harpsichords, including one of the oldest instruments in existence, dating back over 500 years. The collection features harpsichords from various eras and styles, showcasing the evolution of the instrument from early models to later variants. Particularly notable is the Antwerp dynasty of the Ruckers family, who produced harpsichords and virginals of exceptional quality from the late 16th century to the mid-17th century. The instruments crafted by the Ruckers inspired makers in England, France, and Germany, consistently earning admiration and often becoming subjects of imitation and forgery. One of the most remarkable pieces from the Ruckers workshops is a historic harpsichord from 1619, signed by Johannes Ruckers, the son of Hans Ruckers, founder of the dynasty. This instrument uniquely combines a double manual harpsichord and a small virginal. Ingeniously integrated along the curved edge of the harpsichord's rectangular casing. True to the Ruckers tradition, the edges of the casing are adorned with printed paper strips featuring seahorses and stylized decorative elements. The soundboard is decorated in tempera painting with motifs of flowers, birds, and insects, derived from books specifically designed for artists and decorators. The painting on the inside of the lid, depicting Apollo and the Muses, was added later, after the instrument was completed. It is a late copy of a work by Martin de Vos, whose original is housed in the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium.
Among the extraordinary instruments in the museum is the only known original example of a luthiel, invented in 1919 by Belgian Georges Cloedens to modify the tonal character of a piano. The luthiel is a mechanism consisting of various metallic devices that can be installed in any standard grand piano. It allows the pianist to alter the instrument's sound using 4 registers, 2 affect the lower strings, and 2 the higher ones. This innovative mechanism enables the luthiel to mimic the sounds of a harpsichord, a harp, or a lute, and even, in combination, the timbre of a hammered dulcimer. In 1924, Maurice Ravel composed Cigane, a rhapsody for luthiel and violin, which is now typically performed on a piano. Ravel also utilized the luthiel in his lyrical fantasy L'Enfant et les Sortilèges, The Child and the Spells. The luthiel used for the performance of these works was tragically destroyed in a fire at the Salle Gaveau in Paris.
Among the most fascinating exhibits in the museum are the instruments invented by Adolphe Sax. Born in Dinant, Sax is undoubtedly the most famous Belgian maker of wind instruments. With the saxophone, he created a new family of 8 original instruments, distinguished by their uniform design and fingering system. In his patent dated March 21, 1846, Sax stated that this family of instruments would form the foundation of an orchestra that could also perform outdoors. The saxophone quickly gained recognition in military, civilian, and brass bands, as well as in opera and chamber music. Later, it became one of the defining voices of jazz and popular music. A particularly noteworthy item in the museum is an alto saxophone featuring a highly detailed signature on its bell. Beneath Adolphe Sax's characteristic monogram, a design intertwining his initials AS with the inscription Paris, the name of the instrument maker and the designation of the instrument are engraved.
The layout of the museum includes mechanical instruments in the basement, traditional instruments on the ground floor, and orchestral, keyboard, and string instruments on the upper floors. Visitors can use a multimedia audio guide with headphones to hear the sounds of the displayed instruments, making the visit interactive and exciting. The museum's motto is, "You see what you hear." On the top floor of the museum, there is a restaurant with a terrace offering panoramic views of Brussels. A visit to the Musical Instruments Museum in Brussels is a unique opportunity to explore the rich musical heritage of various cultures and eras, all housed in one of the city's most beautiful buildings. In our film, we provided a more in-depth look at the Musical Instruments Museum, where we spent about 2 hours. We will only briefly discuss other museums since visiting them on the same day is not feasible. All museums close at 5 p.m., so another day should be planned for their exploration. Please note, dear art enthusiasts, that even a quick tour of a museum's exhibits requires at least 1.5 to 2 hours.
The Church of St. James on the Coudenberg is a neoclassical Roman Catholic church located on the historic Place Royale at the Mont d'Arts in Brussels. The church was constructed in the 18th century. After its consecration, it served simultaneously as an abbey and parish church, as well as the official court church for the governors of the Habsburg Netherlands. The current building was originally designed as the Abbey Church of St. James on the Coudenberg and features a deep, extended choir to accommodate the choir monks. During the French Revolution, the construction of the abbey was halted, and the church was repurposed as a temple of reason and later as a temple of law. In 1802, it was returned to Catholic control. On July 21, 1831, Prince Leopold of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha took the oath on the steps of this church, becoming Leopold I, the first king of the Belgians. Historically, the church stands as a symbol of Belgian unity. It is located near significant state institutions such as the Constitutional Court, the Court of Audit, and the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium. To this day, the church remains a place of reflection and prayer.
The imposing statue of Godfrey of Bouillon was erected in 1843 on the Place Royale in Brussels. Designed by Eugene Simonis, it depicts Godfrey on horseback. Known as one of the leaders of the First Crusade, Godfrey was a Frankish knight born in the region of Brabant in France, which is now part of Belgium. The First Crusade was launched in 1096 by Pope Urban II to liberate Jerusalem and assist the Byzantine Empire, which was under attack by Muslim forces. Feeling a sense of duty to join the crusade, Godfrey gathered thousands of knights to fight in the Holy Land. He died in Jerusalem in 1100. Accounts of his death vary, suggesting causes such as an arrow wound, illness, or poisoning. The legends surrounding Godfrey of Bouillon live on in classical works. He is celebrated as a hero in Torquato Tasso's Jerusalem Delivered and appears as a spirit in the heaven of Mars in Dante's Divine Comedy. Mark Twain also references Godfrey's sword in his novel The Innocents Abroad.
The charming Magritte Museum houses an extensive collection of items related to the surrealist artist René Magritte, as well as a small selection of his early paintings and sketches. Magritte and his wife, Georgette, lived on the ground floor of this modest house from 1930 until the mid-1950s. This house effectively served as the headquarters of the Surrealist movement in Belgium, where many of its leading figures gathered every Saturday to collaborate on various innovative publications and artworks. The museum provides a fascinating glimpse into the life of one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. It faithfully reconstructs the ground floor as a studio and living space, using original furniture and decorations. Other details have been meticulously recreated based on historical photographs.
The Museum of Old Masters in Brussels, also known as the Museum of Ancient Art, is part of the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium. It focuses on European painting from the 15th to the 18th centuries and houses one of the most significant collections of works by Flemish and Dutch masters. The museum was founded in 1801 by decree of Napoleon Bonaparte and was originally called the Museum of Royal Ancient Art. The collection includes masterpieces by renowned artists such as Hieronymus Bosch, Peter Bruegel the Elder, Peter Paul Rubens, Anthony van Dyck, and Jacob Jordaens. Particularly striking is the Rubens Room, which displays over 20 works by the master, located in the heart of Brussels on Rue de la Regence. The museum is housed in a building constructed in 1887, based on designs by architect Alphonse Ballet. Its facade is adorned with sculptures symbolizing music, architecture, sculpture, and painting, underscoring the building's dedication to the arts. Visitors can admire works by the Flemish primitives, including pieces by Robert Campin, Rogier van der Weyden, and Hans Memling. Paintings by Baroque artists such as Simon Vouet and Philippe de Champagne are also on display. The Museum of Old Masters is a must-visit for lovers of European painting, offering a unique opportunity to discover masterpieces that reflect Belgium's and Europe's rich artistic heritage.
The Church of Our Lady of the Sablon, also known as the Church of Our Lady of Victory, is an elegant example of Brabantine Gothic architecture, with some elements executed in a more recent Baroque style. It is one of Brussels' most famous landmarks, attracting both locals and numerous tourists. The church takes its name from the Sablon district in which it is located. The name Sablon derives from the sandy soil of the area, as indicated by the French word sablon. The origins of the church date back to the early 13th century, when Henry I, Duke of Brabant, recognized the noble crossbowmen's guild and granted it certain privileges, including the right to use a plot of land in Sablon as a practice ground. Nearly a century later, in 1304, the brothers and sisters of the Hospital of St. John ceded the adjacent area to the Crossbowmen's Guild. On this site, the guild began constructing a modest chapel dedicated to the Virgin Mary.
According to legend, the chapel gained fame after a devout woman named Beatrice Sotkins had a vision in which the Virgin Mary instructed her to steal a miraculous statue called Our Lady on the Stock Stick from Antwerp, bring it to Brussels, and place it in the chapel of the Crossbowmen's Guild. Beatrice stole the statue and, thanks to a series of miraculous events, successfully transported it by boat to Brussels in 1348. The statue was solemnly installed in the chapel and venerated as the patroness of the guild. The guild also vowed to hold an annual procession, known as the Ommegang, during which the statue was carried through Brussels. This Ommegang became a major religious and civic event on the annual Brussels calendar. It is believed that construction of the church, which replaced the chapel, began around 1400 and lasted about a century. The choir was completed in 1435, as evidenced by wall paintings from that period. The choir is the part of the church that provides seating for the clergy and the church choir, located west of the altar between the nave and the sanctuary. Construction was interrupted following the death of Charles the Bold in 1477, due to political unrest, but resumed toward the end of the century. The nave, the central aisle stretching from the main entrance to the altar, was built with 7 bays, 2 of which were intended to support a tower that was never completed. In the late 16th century, the church was looted by Calvinists, and the statue of the Virgin Mary that Beatrice Sotkins had brought to Brussels was destroyed during the attack.
A striking feature of the nave is the columns without capitals, which create a powerful effect of verticality. Embedded in these columns are 12 statues of the Apostles, crafted in the mid-17th century by some of the leading Baroque sculptors of the time. The Baroque pulpit, a richly decorated masterpiece by Marc de Vos from 1697, features medallions depicting Thomas Aquinas, the Virgin Mary, and Thomas of Villanova. The base of the pulpit is supported by 4 sculptures representing the 4 evangelists: the angel, Matthew; the eagle, John; the lion, Mark; and the ox, Luke. The stained glass windows, relatively modern additions, were primarily created by artists such as Samuel Cook, Louis Charles Crespin, and Jacques Colpert. The organ above the gallery was built in 1763 by organ maker Barnaby Guyanan. After a thorough examination, it was restored in 1989 by Georges Wessenfelder from Luxembourg. In addition to this historic organ, the nave also houses a second, newer organ constructed by Belgian organ builder Rudy Jacques.
The church is especially renowned for its 2 magnificent Baroque chapels, built by the Thurn-und Taxis family in the latter half of the 17th century on either side of the choir. One chapel is dedicated to Saint Ursula and was designed by Lucas Faidherbe. It features richly adorned sculptures by Gabriel Grappello, Matthias van Beveren, Jerome Duquesnoy, and Jan van de Len. The other chapel is dedicated to Saint Marcold, revered as the patron saint of apothecaries and cloth makers. These 2 chapels are outstanding examples of high Baroque sculpture and architecture as developed in the southern Netherlands. Directly across from the church, a commemorative plaque marks the location where the Thurn-und Taxis family once resided. As imperial postmasters, they established the first international postal service there in 1516.
Opposite the impressive church of Our Lady of the Sablon lies the small park Place du Petit Sablon, one of the architectural gems in the heart of Brussels. This small rectangular square, transformed into a garden in 1890, was previously used as a horse market. Designed in the Neo-Renaissance style, the garden also features a group of sculptures representing the greatest Belgian artists of the 19th century. In the 1880s, the mayor of Brussels, Charles Bulls, proposed beautifying the area and converting it into an enchanting garden, which was opened to the public in 1890. Symmetrical flowerbeds lead to an elevated fountain, whose circular basin is dominated by a sculpture of Counts Egmont and Horn. Behind the fountain, two arched staircases ascend towards the Egmont Palace. The garden's plantings carry symbolic meaning. 9 beds of trimmed boxwood encircling the lawn represent the 9 provinces of Belgium at that time, while another bed in the shape of a crown symbolizes Belgium itself.
The garden is surrounded by an intricately forged iron fence adorned with 48 statues representing medieval guilds. Inside, at the upper end of the slope, stand 10 larger statues dedicated to significant figures from 16th century Belgium. While these figures may be less known outside of Belgium, some names might be familiar: Gerhard Mercator, the renowned geographer and cartographer, William the Silent, often regarded as the founder of the Netherlands, and the artist Bernard van Orly. Atop the fountain are statues of Counts Egmont and Horn, who were executed on the Grand Place in 1568 for their resistance to Spanish tyranny. Behind the square stands the Egmont Palace, which also commemorates Count Egmont. This elegant building was originally constructed in 1534 for Françoise of Luxembourg, the mother of the executed count. Today, the palace houses the Belgian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. A significant historical event took place in this building in 1972, when the United Kingdom signed the treaty for its accession to the European Economic Community, now the European Union.
The Royal Conservatory of Brussels was founded in 1832. Since 1876, it has occupied a building specially constructed for it to the design of architect Jean-Pierre Cloisonnard. In 1877, the Musical Instruments Museum was established within the conservatory. Since 1967, the conservatory has been divided into organizationally independent French-speaking and Dutch-speaking divisions. The building in the Neo-Renaissance style that the conservatory occupies today on Rue de la Régence consists of 3 wings that form an honor court. An honor court, or cour d'honneur in French, is a formal courtyard in front of a palace or mansion, bounded by the main building and symmetrical side wings. It is separated from the outside space by a fence with gates. A classic example of a cour d'honneur was created during the reign of the French King Louis XIII at Versailles. It was only later that similar courtyards became widespread in the palace architecture of other European countries. The conservatory has a concert hall with exceptional acoustics. Designed in the style of Napoleon III and equipped with a cavale call organ, it is considered one of the most beautiful auditoriums in the capital. The main building also houses an extensive music library, currently containing around 250,000 bibliographic units, whose richness and rarity represent a scientific instrument of international significance. The library is open to the public, and its electronic catalog can be consulted online. Since 2024, the historic building has been undergoing extensive restoration. Among the conservatory's renowned teachers are Charles Auguste de Bériot, Henri Vieuxtemps, Eugène Issay, Lucien Petipa, Marie Pleyel, and Igor Oistrakh. Famous students of the Conservatory include Peter Benoit, Isaac Albanese, Adolphe Sax, André Rieu, and Lara Fabian.
Dear friends, our gathering today has come to a close. Art and architecture are an endless conversation about beauty, harmony, and time, one that we have with not only each other but also with ourselves. We sincerely thank you for your attention, for your openness and interest, and for being with us on this inspiring journey. Every encounter with beauty enriches us, and we believe that this meeting will leave in your souls not only new knowledge but also a sense of belonging to something great and eternal. We bid farewell until our next meeting, and we can once again share the joy of learning and inspiration. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for your attention.